the nuclear workers who they fired and then ended up realizing like, oh, we need these people, or the people who work at the, I think it was the USDA,
totally
who were overseeing the bird flu. You can't just fire
I
them.
agree. Right. I agree with you on that. But the people that's complaining about writing the email, it's going to take, what, 5 minutes out of your day, Tiff?
No, it's not going to end.
So at the end of the day, God forbid anybody make any, and it's just democratic thing. It's like, I don't want to get the parties into it, but they don't want to go to work. They want to work from home. People are not working from home.
There was a lot of backlash to this email.
I got the email, and I honestly feel like this is a great opportunity to outline what you as an employee bring to the bring to the federal government. And if it's really good what you outline, they could give you an opportunity to get a promotion or something. Like, God forbid they ask you what you've done.
So if you guys don't know what she's referring to the OPM email that federal employees received saying that you have to list 5 things that you've done in the previous week. And if you do not respond, this is quoted directly from Elon Musk via Twitter, in accordance to Donald Trump's verbiage, that you will resign and this will be seen as a termination if you do not respond. What she's saying is that this is a great opportunity to show exactly what you've done in the previous week. And if you guys don't know, I am a future federal employee, so I will give my thoughts on this at the end. So stay tuned.
Any other job, they'll ask you at the end of the week, at the end of the month, because I used to do bookkeeping. Okay, so what do we do, at the end of the month? What are the clients that we have to, gear towards to? So at the end of the day, God forbid anybody make any, and it's just democratic thing. It's like, I don't want to get the parties into it, but they don't want to go to work. They want to work from home. People are not working from home.
So if you guys don't know, there was a lot of backlash to this email. There were a lot of people saying that they weren't going to respond to this email. There were a union saying that you do not have to respond. Even heads of departments said that you don't have to respond. I'm going to talk about exactly why they said they don't respond. I'm going to talk about why federal employees took so much problem with this email towards the end of this video. And I'm going to tell you guys if I received the email.
This is what you signed up for. If you don't like it, resign. You know what I'm saying? They gave you the opportunity to find another job. I mean, it's not that hard. You're complaining about actually working.
Oh my gosh.
I don't get it.
I'm not mad at your perspective. That's why I like talking to people. I like talking to people, and I like talking to people who are in it, because everybody sees things a different way. I haven't heard this perspective.
Do you feel like there are a lot of people that are not working, that are taking days off? I guess exactly.
Absolutely. I work from home, and you know what? Donald Trump got the gadget idea because Elon Musk, he fired like 80% of the Twitter people or Tesla people for his company, because you can buy a gadget that actually shakes up like you're at the desk, but you're really not working, because the computers, it shuts off if it's non-activity within like 5 minutes. So it requires you to actually work from home. But it's gadgets around that, and people are actually buying it and using it and not working. And this is our taxpayers' money, and you have to work.
So all of these OPM, there are words around that they sprout from Elon Musk's time at Twitter, because if you guys don't know, Elon Musk initially went to Twitter and laid off 80% of the workforce, and now Twitter, which is called X now, is an entirely new platform that Elon Musk runs. And he has been obviously working with the DOGE department on, I guess, gutting the federal workforce. What she's basically saying is that there are gadgets that people buy so that when you're working at home, your computer doesn't shut off. Because if you guys don't know, when you're in the federal workforce, you have government issued everything, meaning that, and this is probably for all jobs, they issue you equipment that you work on, that you can only work on that. You have to have, in some instances, an ID card to sign on this computer, and they really do track how much you're working. And she's basically saying if you have a problem with sending this email, then you have a problem with your job and you shouldn't have a job. Here's what I'll say. I don't fully agree with that. And here's why. When you're in the federal government, some positions have something called a clearance, meaning a security clearance, meaning that you shouldn't send exactly what you're doing unless you're sending it to someone who has a need to know basis and who's in your department. And What this means is if they don't have a need to know, then they should not know what you're doing. That's what outlines the security clearance. So in some departments, such as departments in the Department of Defense, you cannot talk about what you're doing. It's just really that simple. You cannot talk about what you're doing, point blank, period. And that's why the Secretary of the Department of Defense said, do not respond to this email. And here's the problem. If OPM emails you and says, tell me what you're doing, you have until Monday and you have 2 days to respond. The first thing you should do, you should not respond within 5 minutes. The first thing you should do is reach out to your direct supervisor and get their advice on how you should respond to this email. Because if you're working on classified information or secret information, you don't know who's on the other side of this OPM email. You can assume that it's a team of people that you trust, but you really don't know, especially if it's outside of your base. So the first thing you should do is reach out to your supervisor. That's what you're told to do when you have a job. And with that, whatever they tell you to do, you should do. And that's where the problem or the conflict comes in. If OPM sends you an email and they say respond in 2 days, but your supervisor says do not respond, you're working on classified information that should only exist within this base, now you have a real problem. Because what do you do as a federal employee? You do what you're trained to do. You don't have the right to jump outside of your purview. It would be different if this was one large company, which a lot of people see the government as, but as a federal worker, I'm telling you that's not how it is. It's different departments. If it was one large company and everyone was under one specific director, then yes, you can send something. But what happened was Donald Trump himself did not send this email. The email came from the Office of Personnel and Management. That's a different department in the government. So does this department have purview over this department? You don't know that as an employee. That's not your pay grade. What you do know is what your supervisor tells you. The same within the other job. So that's the problem. That's why a lot of people were confused. But let's continue.
You don't like it? Get another job.
I understand what you're saying, but you can't just take a wrecking ball to the infrastructure of the federal government and just start firing people all willy-nilly. Because what about those people who work at the nuclear workers, who they fired and then ended up realizing like, oh, we need these people, or the people who work at I think it was the USDA,
totally
who were overseeing the bird flu. You can't just fire them.
I agree. Right, I agree with you on that. But the people that's complaining about writing the email, it's going to take, 5 minutes out of your day, Tip?
No, it's not going to. And what I'm assuming is that the federal worker on this phone may not work on classified information. And some people's did send the email, but when you're trained to do a job, you should not send an email in 5 minutes. You should not do that. Because unless your job is an extremely simple job where you can say what you're doing and it won't cause any conflicts of interest or won't cause any social security risk, then yeah, you could technically send an email. But when you're getting training for a job, you are directly told by the HR and human resources specialist at your workforce that you should not talk about what you're doing outside of the workforce. If you work for the federal government, you should not directly talk about exactly what you're doing. That's the problem. And that's what media is not trying to tell you. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I have no initiative to lie to you. But the problem is being painted as federal workers are being lazy. They're not at their computers, which some probably are. I'm not going to argue that right now. What I'm saying is from a security aspect, your job is sometimes very secret in the government. You cannot just send out what you're doing. You cannot do that. You could to your direct supervisor and your direct manager who's at the same department of you as you, but you cannot directly send it to another department. You can be fired for that. That's the problem. So if I was to get this email, you have to go to your supervisor. That's just what it is. You cannot say, I'm going to go out of my way to send out information. You cannot do that unless your supervisor tells you that you can, unless you are the supervisor, which there are different rules. But let's continue.
Minutes. I read on Twitter, a guy was complaining, it's going to be an hour. It takes you an hour to write 5 things that you completed? Okay. Maybe you do need another job.
Oh, so you agree with it. Okay. Thank you, Mama.
The great perspective.
So I'm an engineer. If you guys don't know that, I'm not going to say exactly what I do because I cannot do that. So if I were to get this email, the first thing I would do is reach out to my supervisor because I cannot talk about what I do. I just can't do it. So if this was to happen to me, it would be a direct conflict of interest. Thankfully, the department that I work under put out oversight on how to respond to these emails, which is supposed to happen. They said do not directly respond right now. So you should listen to your department when it comes to this. And I know some people will disagree with me, but I'm just telling you how the government works. You will be fired if you do not listen to your department. That's just how it is. The government is not one large company the way that people think it is. The government consists of several different departments that have different functions, that have different abilities, and that have different responsibilities. So if you were to receive this email and your supervisor said, yeah, go ahead and respond, then you respond. But if you receive this email and your supervisor says, or your department head says, do not respond, then don't respond. That's how it works. But if you look at the government from the perspective of, oh, it's one company, all of you are working together in a sense, that's not how it works. You have security clearances for one department that you do not have in another department. It's a very complex structure, and it is not the same as one company. So this email is very troubling for people who do work on things that are a need-to-know basis, or they're very troubling for people who work in departments that say do not respond, or they're very troubling for people who do not even have a government email. So it's very complicated, but I do understand the different takes on this, and I'm just trying to provide some perspective on what it's actually like. But anyways, I'm going to end the video here. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. It's LFR JoJo, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.